In a quiet little village surrounded by green meadows and gentle hills, there once lived a young tailor. His home was small, tucked neatly at the corner of a cobblestone street, where the air always smelled faintly of fabric, thread, and freshly baked bread. Though his shop was modest and his tools simple, his hands were skilled and his eyes were sharp. From sunrise to sunset, he worked by the window, sewing coats and mending dresses for the townsfolk who came and went through the village square. He had little money, but he was content. Each morning, he greeted the sunlight that spilled across his wooden table and began his day with quiet determination. The tailor's world was calm, filled with the steady rhythm of needle and thread and the gentle hum of his thoughts. One bright morning, while the tailor worked on a fine piece of cloth, the sweet aroma of fruit jam drifted through the window. A woman was selling jars of plum jam in the street below. The tailor, who hadn't eaten much since dawn, decided to treat himself. He bought a small jar and placed it carefully on his table. He smiled, ready to enjoy it later after finishing his stitching. As he bent over his work, a buzzing sound filled the air. 7 flies, greedy and bold, had found the jam and were dancing over it, dipping their legs and wings into the sweetness. The tailor frowned. He tried to wave them away, but the flies only grew bolder. Then, with a sudden burst of energy, he picked up a piece of cloth and brought it down swiftly. When he lifted it, he saw 7 flies lying still. The tailor blinked in surprise, then in delight. A thrill ran through him. Never before had he done something that felt so impressive. He looked at the motionless flies and whispered to himself, 7 at one blow. An idea began to form in his clever mind. He cut a strip of fabric and embroidered those very words on it, 7 at one blow. He stitched the letters in bold thread and fastened the belt around his waist with pride. The tailor felt a spark of courage he had never known before. If he could strike down 7 flies in a single swing, who could say what else he might do? He decided that the world was too wide and wonderful for him to remain in his little shop. Packing a small bag with cheese, bread, and his sewing needle, he stepped out of his home to seek adventure. The road stretched before him like a ribbon of promise. The fields shimmered with morning dew, and the tailor walked with light steps, whistling softly. He felt taller, stronger and braver with each mile he traveled. After a long walk, he climbed a hill and sat beneath a tall oak tree to rest. From his bag, he took a piece of bread and cheese and began to eat. Not far away, he noticed a giant sitting on a rock, staring at the clouds drifting lazily through the sky. The tailor's heart raced. A real giant. The creature was enormous, his arms thick as tree trunks, his beard tangled like vines. Though fear flickered in the tailor's chest, his courage quickly returned. He remembered the words embroidered on his belt. 7 at one blow. Surely a man who could defeat 7 in one strike had nothing to fear from anyone, not even a giant. He approached confidently and stood beside the towering figure. The giant turned and glared down at him. The tailor puffed out his chest and pointed to the words on his belt. The giant's eyes narrowed as he read them. He did not know what the words meant, but they sounded impressive. He thought this tiny man must be some great warrior. Wanting to test his strength, the giant picked up a heavy stone and crushed it to powder in his hand. The tailor smiled calmly and reached into his bag. He took out a piece of soft cheese that looked exactly like a stone. Pressing it tightly between his fingers, he squeezed until a stream of milk trickled out. The giant's eyes widened in surprise. Next, the giant tore a tree from the ground and challenged the tailor to throw it farther than he could. The tailor nodded, picked up the tree, and cleverly let it roll down the hill. The giant, thinking the tailor had thrown it with great force, grunted in astonishment. Though the giant admired the tailor's skill, he also grew uneasy. Such strength in such a small man was strange and dangerous. When night came, the giant invited the tailor to stay in his cave, but he planned to get rid of him while he slept. The cave was dark and cold. The giant lay down on one side and soon pretended to snore. The tailor, sensing trouble, stayed awake. When the giant thought the tailor had fallen asleep, he lifted a heavy club and brought it down hard on the bed. But the clever tailor had quietly slipped into a corner, safe and sound. At dawn, when the giant saw the tailor stretching and smiling, as if nothing had happened, he turned pale with fear. Believing that no one could survive such a blow, he fled the cave in terror, leaving the tailor alone with the sunrise. The tailor laughed softly to himself. His cleverness had once again kept him safe. With renewed confidence, he continued on his journey until he reached the gates of a grand castle. The guards stopped him, but when they saw the belt around his waist, their eyes grew wide. They hurried to the king, who immediately sent for the stranger, said to have defeated 7 at one blow. The tailor was brought before the king. The ruler, a proud but worried man, explained that his kingdom was plagued by 2 giants who lived in the mountains. They terrified travelers and destroyed villages. The king promised a great reward to anyone who could rid the land of them. The tailor bowed and accepted the challenge. Though he knew he was small and unarmed, his wits were sharp. He climbed the mountain at dawn and found the 2 giants sleeping beneath the shade of a massive tree. Their snores echoed through the forest like thunder. The tailor gathered stones and climbed up the tree above them. He dropped one stone gently onto the chest of one giant, who stirred but did not wake. Then he dropped another onto the second giant. The first giant opened his eyes and turned angrily toward his companion, believing he had been struck. The other roared in confusion. Within moments, they began to fight. The ground shook beneath their mighty blows. Trees splintered, rocks cracked, and dust filled the air. When it was over, both giants lay motionless. The tailor climbed down quietly and smiled. The problem had solved itself. He returned to the castle and told the king the giants would trouble the land no more. The king, astonished, promised him gold and glory. Yet there was still another danger in the realm, a wild unicorn that roamed the forest, piercing everything in its path with its shining horn. Once again, the tailor volunteered. When he found the unicorn, it charged at him, its hooves pounding the earth. The tailor dodged swiftly behind a tree. The unicorn struck the trunk with such force that its horn became stuck. While the creature struggled, the tailor took his belt and tied it tightly around the unicorn's neck. He led it back to the castle like a farmer leading a horse. The king was both impressed and uneasy. He had promised the tailor his daughter's hand in marriage, but he feared this brave little man might one day take his throne. So the king devised one final task: to capture a dangerous boar that ravaged the royal forest. The tailor accepted once more. He entered the forest with nothing but a piece of rope and his quick mind. He soon spotted the boar rooting among the trees. The beast saw him and charged. The tailor ran straight toward a small chapel nearby and slipped inside. The boar followed, but the tailor ran out through the back door and slammed the front door shut, trapping the creature inside. When the king's men came to look, they found the boar caught and the tailor standing proudly beside the door. The kingdom erupted in celebration. True to his word, the king gave the tailor his daughter's hand in marriage, and a grand feast was held. Though many whispered that a tailor was too humble to marry a princess, the people could not deny his cleverness and courage. In the days that followed, the tailor became known not just for his strength or luck, but for his wisdom. He ruled beside the princess with kindness and fairness, treating all people, rich or poor, with equal respect. But sometimes, in the quiet of the night, when the castle was asleep and moonlight poured through the windows, the tailor would look down at his old belt, still embroidered with those proud words, 7 at one blow. He would smile softly, remembering that his greatest strength had never been in his arms, but in his mind. And so, the tailor lived a long and happy life, proving to the world that true bravery is not about size or power, but about cleverness, courage, and heart.